This episode is brought to you by Refund Club, helping you to get compensation if you've been missold car finance. I love cars, I do actually, but I do not love getting overcharged when I buy one. But that is exactly what happened between 2007 and 2021, when millions of people took out car finance to get their lovely new ride and were overcharged with hidden, unfair commissions by the lenders. They paid over the odds for years and they didn't even know about it. The Financial Conduct Authority has declared this a mis-selling scandal, and they are rightly ordering the lenders to cough up compensation. And it's not small figures. They reckon around 12 million finance agreements could be eligible, and the payouts could run into billions of pounds. If you bought a car on finance back then, some of it could be going to you. The compensation averages around £829 per agreement. And if you bought more than one car on finance, then you could claim separately for each finance deal. And this is where Refund Club comes in. It's the easy way to find out if you're owed money and manage your claims. Visit refundclub.co.uk/T9TM, enter a few details, and it'll check any car finance deals you might have had, find out if you're owed anything, and then process the claims for you. It's all absolutely free to check, and you only pay a fee if your claim is successful. Checking only takes 60 seconds, so go to refundclub.co.uk/T9TM. That's refundclub.co.uk/T9TM to find out if you're owed a payout on car finance. And if you share a car with someone, get them to check too. The more the merrier. That's refundclub.co.uk/T9TM, or follow the link in the show notes. Hello and welcome to Talk 90s to Me, where we provide drinks for free acid house parties, accidentally become a raving reporter for Mixmag, promote the UK's very first legal raves, report from Ibiza whilst on acid by mistake, set up the world's first holiday company catering exclusively for clubbers, release a few dance tracks, and generally have the most fun you ever could have in the 1990s while somehow simultaneously making a living. I'm Miranda Sawyer, and this week on Talk 90s, I am delighted to welcome author, promoter, poet and adventurer Kirk Field, whose books Rave New World and Planes, Trains and Amphetamines provide what we might call deep insight into the 1990s and noughties raving. Hi, Kirk.
Hi, Miranda. Lovely to meet you after all these years.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's very nice to see you. You've written two fabulous books, right? But we're going to concentrate on Rave New World because that is really about the 90s. So we're mostly going to talk about that. Look, as is so often with the 1990s, we're going to start in the late 80s because the late 80s kind of informed the 90s. And where I would like to start is in 1989, which is a very important year for you. And you are living with a DJ called Adam in Mill Hill, right? And he's in inverted commas normal DJ, isn't he?
He's not a DJ. He was the owner of a bar, a mobile bar service
for parties.
For the parties, yeah.
For parties. So you're living with him, and what he does is basically provide the drinks for legit parties, and those parties you would imagine would
bar
start
mitzvahs, 40th birthday parties in Temple Fortune, respectable gatherings.
Respectable gatherings. Anyway. You're in his house and somebody phones up and you take the message. And what is this message?
Oh, this was the first day that I'd broken up with my girlfriend. I was sort of hopeless, penniless, jobless. And he said he got stuck a crash on his sofa. And I said, but I've got no, it's going to take a while for housing benefit to come through. Do you remember housing benefit? Yeah. And he said, all you got to do is answer the phone. And so I answered the phone the next day because he hadn't got an answer phone in. And he was a Thatcher's child. So unlike us, when we left school in the 70s, you just formed bands, didn't you? That's what we all did.
Yeah.
But in the 80s, the Thatcher's children didn't. They were quite entrepreneurial. And so he'd formed like a little company, a little mobile bar business that did these private functions for bar mitzvahs and private people's parties. And so he said, I don't want to miss any of the of the bookings while my answer phone needs getting fixed. So I answered the phone, and it's from this guy called Jeremy, And I just wrote it down on a little Post-it note, and it was like, he said he wanted something for a week on Saturday. He was quite vague, actually. He said it was in an equestrian centre. Whereabouts? He goes, oh, it's just off the M25. So I was like, just off the M25. How many people? And he goes, well, quite a lot. Sort of about 2,000, something like that. I said, oh, 2,000. Right. So I put 2,000 down. I said, so any specific drinks that you want? He goes, yeah, just water, Ribena. I said, yeah, but what about the alcoholic drinks? We won't be needing alcoholic drinks. I'm like, so I continued writing. I said, what's the times? And he went from 12 till late. So I just wrote this down. And Adam came in and he goes, oh, what's this? I said, oh, it's a booking. So he started reading it and he was in a bad mood. He'd been at work all day. He was in a bad mood. He went, what's this? It's a kids' party, isn't it? I said, well, no, I don't think it's a kids' party. I think it starts at midnight. He goes, you just put your 12. So it must be midday. It must be a kids' party. So we started thinking about it. And then I went for a run and I came back and said, Adam, I think I know what it is. It's not a kids' party. I know what it is. He goes, what do you think it is? I said, Batman's filming at the Pinewood Studios. I think it's the rap party for that. Like Michael Keaton and people like that. That would explain it because it's not open to the public. It's like a private party. So he was fully expecting, so he went along fully expecting it to be the rap party from Batman. Now, that night, I didn't go along because I promised my ex-girlfriend, who'd been putting me up on a sofa for 5 weeks, on the condition I would introduce her to Lemmy. This is true. Stay with it. And so I promised I'd introduce her to Lemmy. So my mate was running a Paramount City on a Friday. So I took her down to meet Lemmy and Cobalt Stargazer and Dave Ball from Soft Cell and all those kind of people. So I missed Batman's party.
Yeah.
So on the Sunday, I went back to the flat and all I could hear was as I was walking up the steps. This is a guy that used to listen to Barbara Dixon and Genesis and things like that, Pink Floyd. And I could hear, okay, yeah, keep it locked 24/7. You're going out, sir, going out. And so someone was talking with a muffled sock in his mouth. And so I knocked on the door, he opened it up, and he came waddling towards me. He's had eyes like saucers. So, oh, Kirk, give me a massive, great big hug, sweaty as anything he was. I said, how was the Batman party? He goes, oh, it wasn't the Batman party. I said, it wasn't? He goes, no, it's one of these acid house parties. It was a rave. He goes, I said, what's one of those acid house parties? He goes, yeah, everyone's, what, do they take drugs? He goes, no, there's no drugs. Everyone's on this thing called E. I said, isn't it a drug? He goes, no, it's not. You can talk on it, you can dance on it, you can even drive on it. You've got to try it. It's good. And then he said to me, he looked me in the eye, grabbed hold of my shoulders, looked me in the eye and went, this thing's going to change the world.
Yeah, that is very funny. I mean, it's very funny because then what happens is that you basically join with him and you flip to providing drinks for raves, don't you?
That's it. We get booked every single week because we're the only ones mad enough to go out and sit in South Mimms services for 3 or 4 hours in the hope that we might get a party off the ground. And so every single Saturday through 89, June, July, August, September, October, because it was the sunniest, driest summer on record, every single week we were out at all of those raves, Energy, Sunrise, Biology, Weekend World, Genesis, you name it, we were providing the bars at those parties.
And what's really interesting about it is that really there's when I was reading the book, I kept thinking, I often think this about life anyway, there's just certain tiny little circumstances that make things work. And one is, you just mentioned it, the weather was really good.
Yeah.
And the other one was that you found a kind of, I don't know what the word is, but like a provider of drinks that would do it on sale or return. And
really?
Because that wouldn't have happened, because otherwise you'd have to pay for all the drinks. You wouldn't know if you were going to get the money back because the party might be closed down and you couldn't have afforded to do it.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. And it's the point that I don't think anyone else has ever made in terms of everybody talks about the cat and mouse between the police and the authorities and the promoters and all of those kind of things. But they could have cut off those parties just by visiting the enterprising Asian off-licence in West London who knew exactly what was going on. And he goes, no, and he knew he was trustworthy. He goes, okay, boys, you leave a deposit, you go away. If you don't get the party off the ground, bring it back on Sunday morning. Help me unload it. That's the only thing you've got to do. If you do get it away, come in and bring your stock in. And they could have cut off the water supply to those parties just by putting the shockers on that fella.
It's so mad. Yeah. And the parties that you describe, there's some that I didn't go to these parties, but there's some that I really remember being in the press. There's one in particular that's reported by The Sun. Sorry, it just makes me laugh. The reporting really makes me laugh. It's in June '89. It's Sunrise Midsummer Night's Dream, which is like in an airfield in Waltham. Is that right?
Yeah, Waltham Airfield.
Yeah, airfield. And it's like 11,000 people. It's done really well. You managed, it's one of those things where it was cat and mouse with the police. And, you managed to get through by saying you have to provide water for these people because otherwise, they might die and it's on you. Yeah. So quite often in these cases, it's the amount of people actually mean that the party has to go on. So you have the party. It's absolutely brilliant. You have a great time. Everyone has a great time. It's a really successful party. And then the sun comes out with Spaced Out at Ecstasy Airport, where people ripped heads off pigeons. And they kept saying there was like foil on the ground, which was meant to be wrapping the ecstasy. I really remember this article because I remember reading it and laughing.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
I mean, I do a spoken word stand-up presentation of the book. I've been to the Fringe and done it at Glastonbury. And I do a routine about this. And I read it out and I say like, the bit the heads off pigeons. And I'll say, have you ever tried to catch a pigeon? Like, dogs, cats, small children, Dick Dastardly, they've all tried and all failed. Can you imagine somebody off their chops on a couple of doves who are there like chewing and monging around? They can't even know where their pockets are, let alone what's in their pockets. Can you imagine them having the guile and athleticism to be able to round up and catch a pigeon? And even if they caught it, they go, do you know what? I'm not really hungry.
Yeah,
they wouldn't do that.
Nobody wants to eat, and if you had got the pigeon, you'd just be stroking it gently.
Absolutely,
you would be your little friend.
Yeah, youngsters like young as 11 stroking a pigeon. It doesn't have the same effect, does it?
But that coverage, I really remember it. I mean, it was kind of ludicrous, and in 1989, that coverage was just started happening, hadn't it? Really, that kind of mad tabloid coverage. But the thing that you did as well after this particular rave was that you were really irritated by seeing this article and you wrote it up yourself, didn't you? Yeah,
that was the call to action. I had no inkling or desire or ambition to be a journalist or a writer or an author or anything. I'd just been in a band. My band had split up. And I was just literally working through the summer, really happy, being involved in a scene and this great new music, and I felt a sense of belonging which I hadn't felt all through the 80s. I felt like the 80s took a wrong turn because in the 70s I was into me punk, even though I was only 16 at the time. It's 1978. But then in the 80s, after the goth thing kind of disappeared and sort of dissolved into sort of casual and all that kind of stuff, I felt like I felt like I'd been divorced from mainstream society. I just didn't get it at all. But then when I walked into that rave, all that belonging, that sense of belonging was really blossomed because of the non-judgmental aspects of it. No one cared about me. All they wanted to know was, did you share your water? Did you like the same amount of things? So class, creeds, gender, all those things that have been talked about was really, really important. And I thought that was a really positive thing. So when I saw all the headlines that we'd read on a Monday morning, some of the lurid headlines, children as young as 11, which that's the one that really irked me because no one was in those raves under the age of 24. Because you needed a car, you needed a brick that thought it was a mobile phone, you needed mates that were working. It was 25 quid for a ticket, 15 quid for a pill. Even the water was a pound in those days, so that's expensive. So no kids, no teenagers were in those parties at that stage in 1989. So I decided to right a wrong. I decided to go against that injustice and to tell the truth of what really happened at the raves. And I sent it off to about 5 different people, The Face, who weren't interested, Daily Mail, What Was I Thinking, Gardener's World, and then Mixmag. I sent it off to Mixmag, and which I believed was I didn't see Mixmag. Someone told me that it was a newsletter or a magazine, monthly newsletter for DJs.
Yep.
And so I thought, they might print it. And Tony Prince rang me the next day, and that was it. I became their raving reporter.
You were their raving reporter, which is great. There's a little detail about that I really liked as well, because they offered you 25 quid. And then the guy whose house you were staying in said, ask for more. And so you said, please can I have £32.75 because that's the equivalent of my dole for that week.
That's symbolic. And Adam was going, no. He had his spliffy. You've got to drive a harder bargain than that. But I thought that was really, the fact that I could make a week's dole money by writing about a rave, for me, that was really important. And then, of course, from there, Dave came back to me and said, are you going to Sunrise next week? I said, well, who isn't? He said, we'll give you 3 pages on Sunrise.
Absolutely
so
great.
Can I have more? So yeah, so I think I got £100 for that.
But this one in Sunrise, it's an interesting time for raves, isn't it? Because essentially this is the time when there is a lot of cat and mouse with the police, where it's before, any laws were kind of brought against the raves, and they're kind of trying to work out how to manage them. And obviously everybody who's putting on the raves are also trying to work out how to avoid them. And Tony Colston Hayter was he like Back to the Future, is that right?
Yeah, Back to the Future and Sunrise.
And Sunrise, right. And he basically came up with this idea that if everybody's a member, it's not going to be illegal. So he did that, and he also kind of made the farmer where they were going to hold the raves like sign a contract. So he was kind of coming in with quite clever ideas to make it work. Yeah,
Tony was a genius, a flawed genius. He's had his problems since, but he was incredible. The stuff that he came up with. So he noticed that he obviously had legal brief that was down on the front gate at all times. 24 hours, 48 hours, he'd be paid. And so he identified that, in actual fact, they brought it, and there's a delicious irony, the Tories brought it in for young farmers to be able to have barn dances without having to apply for an alcohol or dance licence, because it's a private party. It was like, Chelmsford young farmers or Keswick young farmers. So that's why they brought it in, ostensibly for young farmers. And so we noticed that, but there was no upper limit. So it didn't say as long as there's no more than 75 people involved. So, we had something like 20,000 members. In Sunrise had 20,000 members, because the flyers, you look at any of those old flyers, on the back of the flyers was a place, a little dotted line where you could a perforated line which you could cut off, and you put your name and address. So when you bought your ticket from a record shop or from one of the ticket distributors, they give you a ticket, but only if you gave them your name and address and telephone number. That was your membership, and that £25 included 1 year's membership to Sunrise or Back to the Future. Yeah,
so it's really, really clever. Anyway, that Sunrise, which was kind of a touch and go one, as they always are, like the police were threatening to take the farmer to court, but also Sunrise was threatening to take the farmer to court because he said he signed a legal document. Anyway, you go there. There's all sorts of people there. I wrote down some of the lists of people. Yeah. So there's George Michael. There's people from Feet First, which is a club in Camden, Phillips, Salon, Boy George, Amanda de Cadenet, the Wee Papa Girl Rappers, most of the cast of Grange Hill.
which is brilliant.
I love that. Some bloke from The Bill and a saucer-eyed female ITN newsreader.
That's right, yes. The reason why I know that is because I wasn't out looking for these celebrities. I was my job that night was to park the cars, because as much as though we were doing the bar, Tony said, look, I'm reviewing this for Mixmag. It's really important I get in. There's no jiggery-pokery here. So look, the only way I can guarantee you can get in is if you do the car park stewarding for a few hours first. I said, right, whatever it takes. So I was there on site really early. So I was parking all the cars from sort of 10 o'clock till midnight, and after that I went off and did some bar work and did some raving and things. So I got to see firsthand who was arriving, it was like a ringside seat, and these people, and Boy George gets out, and then George Michael gets out, and then the Grange Hill cast get out, and then the ITN news girl gets out, and I'm like, oh yo yo. It just felt like everyone in the world was at Sunrise.
Yeah, it's amazing. I really love it. Anyway, these kind of raves are happening all throughout 1989, aren't they? I mean, they're happening not just in those kind of areas, they're happening in like Kent, in Sussex. They're happening all over the shop, aren't they?
Yeah, all around the M25. And the M25 was Margaret Thatcher, I call the godmother of rave.
So she'd really appreciate that.
And usually that gets a boo when I say that in theatres and stuff. But I point it out that without her building the Magic Roundabout for us, opening the M25 in 1988, which allowed us to move 25,000 people around 4 different counties at the drop of a hat, or the change of a text message on the voicemail service that BT just introduced. And again, one of Tony's ideas was like, BT said, if you want to update your message, if you say, I'm just going out now, we're just going out with the wife, I'll be back at 9:30. If you're stuck in traffic and you go, oh, I'm not going to be back now until 10, you can then update your answer phone message remotely, which meant that we could put an answer phone message somewhere and Tony or the team could update that remotely, so it would keep on giving different information as regards the meeting places and all of these kind of things. So we were one step ahead with them. But again, it was Tony that did that, but we used the state's apparatus against them, that BT. Yeah. It was BT's voice note thing that really helped that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That's what I mean by the funny little things that make a scene work, because obviously everybody wants it to work, but just funny little extras. That's what tips it into actually happening. There's a very funny moment. I mean, Tony Colson-Hayter is a very weird and interesting person. He essentially was a gambler who then moves into Raves, and actually is then after that done for fraud and has addiction problems and all sorts. But at this point, I mean, to me, he's like kind of a very amazing character. And there's a point where he's on television trying to explain or trying to promote the freedom to party movement. And this is again in 1989. And he appears on TV with Jonathan Ross and Susie Sue and Paul Morley, to discuss it, I think, really. Yeah. But he feels that he is going to be set up, because he is posh, as the kind of posh boy, ludicrous person. And so he handcuffs himself to Jonathan Ross. Live on telly. It's so funny.
I mean, also there's a symbolism there. Basically, what Tony's idea was, he said, look, the state wants to restrict our movement, so we're going to show you what it feels like to have your movement restricted. And so he'd practice. I met him on the Monday morning at sunrise, and that was the Saturday night that was filmed. It was filmed live. And I met him on the Monday morning, and he told me he'd spent 4 days constantly practicing that movement on people, to be able to just come up to someone and click shut on. So it's that kind of meticulous preparation. Tony's a fascinating character. He was very charismatic in '89. I was really fond of him. I thought he was great. I was very sad to see what happened. Hopefully he's got over those hurdles, and he's got a lot to offer as Tony. I hope he uses his gifts in a positive way.
Yeah, he's kind of amazing. So anyway, that's still the 80s.
We haven't even got to the 90s yet.
In the 90s, you have various, your book is packed full of anecdotes, and I'm not going to pick them all because I do think that people should either listen to your audiobook or read the book themselves. But there is a motif in your book that I am going to pick up on, right? And this motif is a particular type of acid. Which, to be honest, gets you into quite a lot of difficult situations, right?
Yeah.
So we are not promoting drugs. We are just observing the situation that everybody was in. And you found essentially what you call Berlin wallpaper, and it is acid on wallpaper that you can basically carry around and it looks like wallpaper. And you use this on various occasions.
Yeah.
Several of the occasions, you don't mean to use it.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
It's just, you've either by mistake, it's either in the turn-up of your trousers or it's in your socks.
Yeah.
And when it was in your socks, what happened when it was in your socks?
Well, can I just explain why it was in my socks?
Please do.
Because when I told Tom Doyle that in
Tom Doyle, excellent smash hits and now and Q journalist.
When I told him that, he told Mick Jones, who he was talking to at the time, and Mick Jones went, "What? That's what they're doing now. They're putting it in people's socks." He thought I'd been spiked. No, I did it myself. You spiked yourself. Now, the reason why it was in my sock was because as much as though ecstasy was really big in the UK, and we all had little white pills and stuff. When I went overseas to Ibiza or to Russia or to these weird and wonderful places, watching as the dance wave exploded across the planet, I had two choices. I either had to try and get something when I was out there, which is never a good idea. But to be honest with you, the proliferation of ecstasy took a while to actually happen in Europe, which is ironic given that most of the stuff in '89 was actually made in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And so I went to a party at a house. I wrote for a magazine called Encyclopedia Psychedelica. They had a thing called Evolution magazine. And I went to a party there, a launch party. And I was directed into the kitchen where the homebrew was. And I was expecting some sort of, some sort of a cask or some sort of bottles or something. What they meant by their homebrew was actually on the table. I said, where is it? Because it's on the table. I said, well, I can't see anything. There's only some twiglets and stuff like that. He said, no, it's actually on the table, Kirk. So they came in and pointed it out. And there was this length of wallpaper on the table. And it was stained. And it was pointed out to me that these dark stains were the results of the people whose party it was were actually acid producers. They produce tabs of acid for the whole of London. And when they would dry they started off hanging it up on the washing line, these papers. But what would happen is all the acid would go to the bottom, and so they'd be really strong at the bottom and not so strong at the top. So in the aims of consistency, what they decided to do was to lay it out on a porous,
to give a quality product.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To lay it out on a porous product, which was the wallpaper, the back of wallpaper. And so there's some scissors there on a piece of string. And so literally you just cut a bit of thing and what do you do? Oh, you just chew it. So I just chewed this stuff. And it was like, I think I described in the book, it was like acid light. It was just like, you have the sort of the buzziness and the kind of the liveliness and the kind of insights without the kind of, oh no, the walls are going to close in, or about the paranoia or anything like that. And so I thought to myself, wow, this is stuff I can take overseas, and they're not going to look at it and say, what's this pill? So I put some in my turn-ups, and I forget about it, and I put some in my socks, and I forget about it. I went to Ibiza, and then it all started going a bit strange because the wallpaper was in my socks.
And it's quite a posh do. And well, it's not a posh do, it's like a launch do, and there's loads of people there, and you're meant to be like covering it, and you're meant to be like, one of the important events was Brigitte Nielsen was meant to be there, and you basically interview a waitress thinking she's Brigitte Nielsen, don't you?
I get the exclusive. I got the whole exclusive on this girl, and I was like, "Do you mind?" And I was like, "So is your boyfriend here tonight?" Obviously, because you've gone out with Sly Stallone. So I was like, "Is your boyfriend here tonight?" No. Where is he? He is working. Ah, right. He works hard, does he? A new film or something like that? What, cinema? I said, yeah. He goes, no. He's a mechanic. He's playing a part of a mechanic. So I just got it wrong the whole thing through. But then even worse than that, I then went off and found the paparazzi boys who I was knocking around with. And I went, I've just got it. I've just found her. Because she was late. He was doing a real diva thing, coming in late. So where is she? Because she's out on the terrace. Quick, she's out there. So all the paparazzi boys all piled out from the pit, just as Aztec Camera doing their one song, Good Morning Britain. And they all came piling out. And then about 5 minutes later, Justin, the guy just goes, are you on acid or something? I said, what do you mean? He goes, that's not Brigitte Nielsen, isn't it? I said, she's about 5'5" and dark hair, Kirk. Brigitte Nielsen's about 6'8" with bleached blonde hair. So that was it. And it went from bad to worse. Yeah,
don't mistakenly, by mistake, do drugs, kids. That's what we're saying.
That's a good reason not to do it. In fact, talking about that, one serious thing about the book, because one of the reason why I wrote the book, Miranda, was because I wanted my kids, my boys, to know what kind of person their dad was before he just told them to tidy up their room or limit their screen time. But I wanted to be honest about the recreational drugs that I'd taken. I didn't want to glorify it. I didn't want to warn them off. I just wanted to tell them as it is. And that's how it is with drugs. Some good things happen, some bad things happen, just like life. And so I wanted to put the evidence there on them and go, look, this is what I did. You make your own mind up. There's lots of good reasons in there not to do drugs. And so the last chapter of the book, I do tie that up. So it's quite important to say, the Raving world is not pro-drugs. It's not anti-drugs.
Not at all.
One thing it does say is let's have a discussion about drugs.
Yeah, and also the last two, I really like the last two chapters in your book, I have to say, because it's essentially about, you discuss drugs and you make the point that you just had, but also you discuss why people's lives were changed by going out, which I think is fundamentally important. Still now, I think it's really important for people to go out, mix with other people, dance in the same spot, go to festivals, go to clubs, have a good time, because there is something about being in a space, responding to music with other people that will change your life. Like it's really important.
It is, and and I think now, looking back, I mean, people quite often ask me, well, why do you think people enjoy your book? And as much as though, some good stories in there and funny things go on and things, I think the main reason it is, and this is what I get when I do my live shows afterwards, people come up to me and tell me, the main reason is it reminds them of a simpler, more innocent time. It reminds them of a time when we weren't polarized as we are now, that we were, that every time you had an opinion, it meant someone had to cancel you, or you couldn't retain friends with those people. It just really holds a mirror up to today's society that we're living in now, with social media, with all the problems that we've got. Looking back on it, in the 90s, it was a dream world. It was an age. We felt naughty, but it was really innocent.
Yeah, there was definitely a kind of innocence around it because you didn't know, and you were just out to have a good time, really.
Yeah.
One of the things that you do for really quite a while is you work with a party called Raindance. And Raindance is really interesting. I did not know this. So Raindance is essentially the first legal UK rave, which I had just no idea about at all. But you work with them from really in the early 90s is when you work with them, isn't it? In and you get press and promotion and stuff like that. And the reason why it's legal is, similarly to what Tony Colston-Hayter was doing, is there is a license already. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah. And the reason why they got it away was they had quite a sharp legal fella.
And it's in Essex, right?
It was just off the A13. And the reason why you wouldn't have heard of it is because a lot of people have glossed over it because it was considered unfashionable at the time.
Because it's in Essex.
Because it's in Essex, it wasn't the West End. They were playing this breakbeaty kind of stuff rather than the kind of fall to the floor Balearic Boys Own kind of tackle, which all the rest of the media were going crazy for. And they were playing really kind of manic, kind of breakbeaty stuff from DJs and acts that no one had heard of, called The Prodigy from Basildon, Slipmat, SL2, LSD, all of these kind of people that came out of Essex that went on to define a sound. Raindance was the cradle that gave them that thing, but still they were overlooked because they weren't considered fashionable.
Yeah, I think that's very true, definitely. And this Raindance is at a place called Jenkins Lane.
Yeah.
And essentially what happens is it's a guy, he's actually a cabbie, says to Newham Council, can I have a party? And they say yes, because they've already got an outdoor licence for this clubhouse, the Jenkins Lane's clubhouse, and they've got an alcohol licence. So yeah, sure.
It's just an extension.
It's just an extension. So it's really similar to what we were talking about before. I think that's really interesting. And they have this party. Again, this is in 1989, and it lasts really quite a long time. So it lasts through the next day, through a car boot sale, through a couple of local football matches.
Yeah.
And so the next time they do it, they're like, okay, right, that went on too long. So you can only do it to 2 a.m. But it's still 5,000 people. It's not small.
No, but I think what happened that second time is I think Paul went to Newham Council and they said, why do you need another party? He said, it's for the football club. We're going to raise some funds for the football club. So what are you going to do? He goes, we're going to do some mud wrestling. And he goes, mud wrestling, what's that? And he goes, and the scanty young females, they wrestle each other. And, of course, Newham Council, that sounds fine. Stamp that. Obviously, it was Essex. And there's no pole dancing or mud wrestling went on whatsoever. They just said that explained why they wanted to go so late. And so, that's the next one was really successful. But by now, we're the only people in town in the southeast been able to get away raves. But the problem that we had, and because I did their press, the problem that we had was I had a real dilemma that I didn't know whether to put the address on the flyer or not. Because if we put the address on the flyer, people wouldn't think it was a rave because they like that cat and mouse type thing. Yeah. So for the first two, I don't think we did put the thing on the initial flyers. We just gave meeting points, and we had a lot of buses leaving from Trafalgar Square and from Hendon and from all over the place, all converging on Jenkins Lane. because we didn't want to appear too cozy and
too legit.
Yeah, too legit.
Yeah. It's really. I mean, I think it's really interesting because a lot. There's people who were regular were people like the Prodigy. So like Keith Flint was dancing down the front, but also like. Again, it's just so funny. Rave is so funny who it pulls in, I think. So like Daniela Westbrook, Chris Lowe from the Pet Shop Boys.
Yeah, he'd never get out of his car. He'd just sit in his car all night, just nodding his head.
So funny. I mean, all this stuff I think is, I mean, it's like a bridge, isn't it? Because at the beginning of the 1990s, there was a point where the Free Party movement really was actively being shut down, and the only way that parties could continue is actually to go legit.
That's right, yeah, because they brought in the Graham Bright bill, or the increased penalties bill, in March 1990. And that was very successful because they realised they couldn't ever snuff it out. They couldn't ever stop the demand. And they knew that the promoters would always get one over on them in terms of the cat and mouse and be one step ahead. So they worked at this. And I did quite a lot of research at the National Archives for this. And I saw all the documentation and the internal communication between the different offices of state. Basically, accepted that the only way that they could actually stop these raves is by increasing the penalties of the offences. Like, for example, if you drop litter in the site, you'd get fined of £2,000. If you blocked a highway, you'd get fined £2,000. If there's any noise limits, you'd get £2,000. So the promoters used to build all this in. They go, we're going to get between 8 and 10 grand fines. So we'll just build that into the ticket price. But they increased the penalties from £2,000 per offence to £20,000 per offence. So suddenly it meant it wasn't economically feasible. You'd have to give away the first 100 grand of your earnings before you started making profit.
And then they come after your house, like you know what I mean?
So that is why the '89 rave stopped.
It's very interesting. Anyway, you do work on quite a lot of kind of interesting parties, some of which are successful and some of which are not. And for me, because obviously I've never promoted a club. I don't do any of that. I'm just one of the punters that turns up at places.
You've got it easy.
Yeah, exactly. I have the nice time. Thanks very much for providing it, people. But you do some parties that go really, really well. And then what's interesting to me is you'll do a party, like say you did one in Coventry that goes really, really well. And it's partly goes well because another one in Milton Keynes doesn't happen and everybody turns up and, that's really great. So you decide to do it again and it goes really badly. Like the kind of look of it or the randomness of whether something is going to be successful is so odd. It
was real frontier time. Suddenly there'd be a new kid on the block.
Yeah.
Or suddenly a new venue would crop up that wasn't there. So you'd go, right, we're going to do Coventry Clips on this day. There's nothing else going on that day. And then you get your flyers out. And then 2 weeks later, someone had announced they're doing a massive thing just down the road. It was just all the time. It was such a fervent scene, all just effervescing and fizzing and changing. So you couldn't ever rely on anything. There's no given that you would get a free pass on anything you did. So what I will say is that the money that we lost was how can I put this? There's a saying that goes, easy come, easy go. The money that we lost wasn't my hard-earned earning, our hard-earned savings. It was one of our partners who ran quite a lucrative import-export business along the same lines as Howard Marks did.
Okay.
It was an old-school gentleman
a gentleman dealer. Is that what you were saying?
More a distributor.
Oh, okay.
And so, if we lost 20 grand in Plymouth, we didn't lose our mortgage or didn't mean to say the kids didn't get a Christmas present. It was stuff that was there. It was almost like a hobby for him, to be honest.
That's so interesting because there was one that is in the book which makes me laugh because essentially there's a huge argument about what the night's going to be called, and then the flyer is finally printed, and that's slightly wrong.
I'll tell you that one if you want that one. That was because you ask any promoters out there, I'll tell you the most important thing about your promotion is what it's going to be called. What's your night going to be called? And that's far more important than who you booked, what kind of sound rig you've got, how many colours the laser has, what your night's going to be called is the really important thing. And so I had two partners, and one wanted to call it Love of Life, and the other one wanted to call it Life of Love. And so I was there waiting to speak to the printer. And in the days, you just had to phone things through. You couldn't just, they're already typeset it up. Everything was already in place to go, apart from the title. And I said, we'll let you know by 6 o'clock today. And they were arguing, no, it's got to be Love of Life because, we're in love with life. No, it should be like Life of Love because we want people to lead a life of love. And this was going on and on, backwards and forwards. And so, we sent out pizzas. It was almost like it's like when you choose a new pope, is a black smoke going up the chimney or white smoke going up the chimney? And I called it, we'll let you know by 7 o'clock. Sent out for pizzas, come in. So I'll let you know by 8 o'clock. It got to the stage I was going to miss my last train. I said, look, I'm going to miss my last train home now. It's 9:30 at night. Of course, they'd started smoking by this time, hadn't they? It was all a bit, And I said, look, let's just toss a coin. Let's just toss a coin. So I tossed the coin, came down like, Love of Life. Love of Life. Yeah, Love of Life. Yeah, absolutely. That's it. Yeah. Oh, thanks. Thank you. Cheers. So I put the phone down. Next day I got up, went in. And of course, that was the day. It was like Christmas and your birthday rolled into one when your flyers arrived. When the stuff that you'd been writing, it's like when you write something and it appears in a magazine or in a book, it's like, it's tangible, like this.
It's a real thing.
It's a book. It's a hardback book. And so I turned up at the office in Old Street, and the van was just going down the road, and I was like sniffing the exhaust fumes of the sweet van. Oh, the aroma! I was fantastic. The flyers have arrived. The cardboard boxes on the steps and everything. I came in. It was all in there. Went in. I said, "Flyers have arrived then," and they're all looking down like this. Yeah, the flyers are here. I said, "What did it look like then?" Without even looking at me, one of them just went
showed
and
it.
Held out a flyer. Of which there were 75,000. And the rave was called Love of Loaf. Loaf. Love of Loaf. And
we all like toast. I think fine. I think if you had a Love of Loaf rave and you were offering cheesy sandwiches, I think people would have taken it on.
It was a bad line, obviously, when I was calling him. But yeah, but this is the kind of thing. Episode 75,000 flyers, pulped.
Oh my God.
And then back again. This is the kind of mad stuff that went on.
What I hadn't realised was those kind of economics. So you just had to pulp like 75,000 flyers, but you could, you spend on the license for the night, on the venue hire, on the police, on medical, if you always have to have something there, on production costs. So you're coughing up quite a lot. And then if people just don't buy the tickets, you're done for.
Yeah, and the problem, I think the problem came when we started. When it started to become a crowded market. Initially, Raindance were the only people who could do those things. But then when other councils saw how we worked with Newham, they came down and watched us as a case study. And so then they started, like in Cambridge, they started working with people there, I think in Norwich as well. So suddenly all around London you had, and I think in Edmonton Council as well started working. I think someone at the Islington was Michael Sabell Centre. They did a licensed rave. And so there was more competition, which means we had to go further out. And that's when it started going wrong. When we went to Plymouth, Coventry the second time, Barrow and Marbella. Marbella went really wrong.
Yeah, Marbella, I mean, as you say, was the wrong audience, completely the wrong audience.
Yeah.
really, you need to go to like Ibiza, not
I told
Marbella.
them, but they didn't listen.
They did not listen to you. All these kind of economics and the anecdotes of your book, I really, really love. But if you're thinking about the 90s, so we start off with the raves, the proper kind of illegal raves, and you're working all the way through. And this is not particularly it's not a career that you imagined you were going to have. It's kind of luck and entrepreneurialism and ideas, And by the end of the 90s, like your life or that life is established. It's quite astonishing, really, that you can make a life out of it, isn't it?
I think that, and what I did really it personified what a lot of us did in the 90s. The thing about the 90s was, I think, that defines it, I think, is that we felt like we could do anything we wanted to do. We had an idea and we'd go, and there just seemed to be an energy in the air that went, do you know, let's do it. Yeah, let's fucking do it. So we did it. And it was no case of, oh, no, we can't really do that because there was just almost we did everything we wanted to do. And suddenly if I wanted to start a night or do like an ambient night, let's do that. Ring Alex up and Jimmy from KLF, they came down and played. I wouldn't call it ambition. I just think it was just adventure. We just saw the whole thing as an adventure in the 90s. And I think that's, looking back on it, I think one thing I've said, and a little bit of writing recently for the third book, I've said that being on the 90s, as it got towards the millennium, the late 90s, I think it feels like, when you used to go to a children's playground, they had one of those wooden roundabouts, those roundabouts with the rails on the top that you'd get on, and you'd lay down with your back, and your mates would swing it around, and you'd go faster and faster and faster, and eventually you'd be flung off. Well, that's what the late 90s, I think, felt like. We were all trying to ride it and hold on, stay on for as long as possible, and the whole thing was getting faster and faster. And of course, millennium was approaching. It felt like we were like grains of sand in a timer, an egg timer, just kind of flick through and we have as much fun as we could possibly do before we fell through into the next century.
Yeah. There's an idea that it just falls and goes away. I mean, you actually do, like in the next 10 years, you set up a company that basically provides, kind of travel for ravers, really, which is a really brilliant idea, and now is almost standard, but wasn't at the time. No, and it's the same. And the thing, that's part of it. Going, okay, I don't know anything about travel. I've never studied travel and tourism, but my wife said, why do you? Because we needed to get a mortgage. We've been renting for 5 years. And she said, why, I said, I need to show I'm earning a certain amount of money. I know I'm earning from all over the place, a little bit from freelance journalism, a little bit from promoting, a little bit from performing, a little bit from publicity, but I can't really justify it. I need something that's more set, that's more legal, more legal, that's an entity. And so, I was advised to set up a limited company or go a sole trader. And I said, but what am I going to do? And my wife just said, why don't you do what you're best at? I said, what am I best at? She goes, showing people you like the places you love. She goes, when you take your friends to Austria or to Ibiza, you're a brilliant guide, because you love those places and you impart that love of that place. And so I kind of drew a line around it and went, yeah, okay. So instead of taking my mates to Ibiza or to Meyerhofen in Austria, I took hundreds of people or thousands of people, and it grew organically like that. Yeah, it's great. I mean, I really love that, because I know in the first book you don't really know that that's going to happen, but then in the second book that's like a whole other. It's a whole other story. There's some really lovely quotes at the end, which I'm going to quote at you from the first book, and it is to do with bit crowds being together, right? Right. And you use two quotes, and one quote is this: when we watch someone else do the same thing at the same time as us, it feels like we become one. And this is another one: when a number of bodies of the same or of different magnitudes are pressed together by others so that they communicate their motion to one another, these bodies are said to be mutually united, and taken together they are said to compose one body or individual. So what you're talking about is the experience of being in a crowd and everyone having a really brilliant time. And it's that I think is really important. Really. Yeah, that's physics. I mean, those second word, that was from Baruch Spinoza, I think, who's a philosopher. Yeah, it's not it's far too eloquent for me. But, it's physics. And I brought the physics in to kind of back up what I already know. Because wisdom isn't, whenever you hear wisdom, you don't go, ooh, that's interesting. There's a little voice goes, yeah, I know that, but that's how you express it in words. That's what wisdom is. And so when I read that, I just had to include it because, I've been in that situation before, when we're all in a mass. And it was more defined for me because I used to be in a band. So it was all about me. I was at the front man. It was like, Bono crossed with Billy Idol. And it was all very sort of late 80s ego, yeah. And so it was fantastic. I was very self-aware. It was fantastic when I first went to the dungeons in Walthamstow to dissolve
into that crowd. And so instead of trying to dance to look good, like I'd done all through the 80s with pouting and all, that kind of thing, I just shook it off. I just shook it off and just danced like a child dances. Like, you watch kids at a party, they all just jump around.
They quite often just run around, don't they? Just go like that.
Yeah. And there's always one guy running the other way.
Yeah.
But so, I just think that is really a magical thing. And we keep coming back to it. You keep coming back to it about that unity, that unifying thing about being in a crowd and your ego dissolving. More of that, please. We need more of that. That's why people go to football and chant at the same time and all of these kind of things. But I think the one... the gatherings, people coming together, is under threat. I think it's under threat economically because it's cheaper to get a £6 bottle of wine at the supermarket than go to the pub for a few hours and meet somebody. So all of these things are building up to keep us inside our homes, to keep us away. I don't know if it's on purpose or by accident or by design, but it is a fact that our lives are becoming more separated, and I think there's a danger in that.
I mean, it does still happen. That's what we can hold on to. So if you think about like nowadays, all the old ravers or even new ravers are raving, but they're doing it during the day.
They are, yeah. It's quite a phenomenon. And I've actually written a poem about that.
Shall we hear your poem, Kirk?
Yeah, let's. So basically, this is the idea that one day we'll all be in a retirement home for ravers, and that retirement home will obviously be called Done Raving, won't it? And I just think that you can imagine the situation whereby an old raver or a graver is there and somebody's putting music on and he kind of gets the words a little bit wrong to the songs. And so the carer goes over to him and starts asking him what's going on. And he explains and he goes, my mind's a bit hazy. It's probably the E. Back in the day, I was a raver, see? In fields, warehouses and convoys we'd connect. Preaching peace, love, unity and respect. Until the kids came along and my hair turned grey. But now they've left home and my divorce is final, I've dug out the bucket hat and dusted off the vinyl. I'm a 50-plus teenager, a.k.a. a graver, leading myself astray. I'm out each and every Saturday afternoon to a daycare disco with fluoro carers like Tall Paul, Slipmat and Rob Tissera, shouting saga, 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 saga. In the lasers flowing free, I can dance for hours despite a dodgy knee. After scoring some pills from my mate Col, I double-drop paracetamol to loosen the limbs in a sea of grins by the bass bins at Clockwork Orange. When I used to rave, I dropped whiz and ease. These days, I just wheeze from hypergogo to hypertension. The line of coke is now a cue for a stroke, drawing my last breath in a cardiac arrest to What Time Is Love by the KLF. I'm bigger and bolder and rougher and tougher. In other words, sucker, there is no other. But where's the one and only defibrillator? Where's the one and only defibrillator? Throwing shapes to Voodoo Ray. But home in time for match of the day. On the train home in broken pieces before scoffing me flatmates frozen pizza. Freezer goods. Is edible freezer goods. If this is all a familiar flavour, then like me, maybe you're also a graver. And we'll meet in the Dunraving end-of-life care facility, because eternity starts with an...
Hey! Excuse me for interrupting Kirk's fantastic madness for a second, but it is time to announce this week's Talk 90s Queen, Jo Homan. Queen Jo is one of our gorgeous Patreon members who's decided to give a couple of her hard-earned quid to her favourite 90s pod, and now she is this week's delectable Talk 90s Queen. Thank you, Queen Jo. Enjoy your 7 days of steering your grumpy husband towards the local councillors whilst you nip out for a fag. And it's also a huge thanks to this week's Talk 90s King, King Paul Hay. Thank you, King Paul. Grab that champagne glass with your big old red fingers and neck it whilst wondering if anyone at all, has come far. If you too would like to become Talk 90s royalty, then why not pop over to patreon.com and search for Talk 90s to me. You know it makes sense. Extra episodes and the chance to get your hands on Talk 90s to me merch. Oh yes. Now on with the show. Okay, so here at Talk 90s to me, we of course have our Talk 90s Spotify playlist. So which track do you choose to have playing whilst you're tripping off your nuts on shoe acid?
in honour of when we first met. The song that was playing, Miranda, that sultry night all those years ago.
No idea.
Well, that's why I didn't talk to you, because I wanted to dance to Planet Funk's Chase the Sun by Smoking. Well, Smoking Joe was playing it, but it's not by her. The reason why I like it is because it's a really happy song. It really kind of sums up that carefree 90s vibe. And of course, it's infused with Balearic spirit.
We love a bit of Balearic spirit. Okay, that was Talk 90s to Me, featuring the amazing Kirk Field, whose books, Rave New World and Planes, Trains and Amphetamines, are available everywhere. I would recommend the audio version of these books, because the audio version of Rave New World, what happened to that?
Well, I had to fight to get the music on it, and they eventually relented. I wore them down, and I said, no, it's going to really work with music underneath it. So when I'm talking about finding the rave or parking the cars at car park at Sunrise with George Michael getting out, there's the distant thud of a kick drum underneath to really give it some atmosphere. And anyway, I was vindicated because I was up for an award, and I said to my wife, I'm up for an ARIA award. And she looked and she goes, "Oh, you're up against Stephen Fry and Alan Partridge." I thought, well, I'm not gonna win that, but I did.
Yes, good.
It was the highest rated audiobook of 2024, Rave New World.
Yeah, excellent. Amazing. That's what I like to hear. Okay, if you join our Patreon, not only will you get the chance to buy some very cute merch, such as Talk 90s to Me mugs, long sleeve tees, and bucket hats. Why don't you try it on? Go on, Kirk, get your bucket hat on.
I've dug out my bucket hat and just off the vinyl. Up and in.
There you go. You look great. You'll also get extra episodes about odd stuff I like from the 90s, and you might become our Talk 90s king or queen for a week. Subscribe to Talk 90s on your podcast app. Follow us on Blue Sky and Instagram. Leave us a voice note on Insta. We're Talk 90s to Me pod. Or send us an email so you can tell us all about your very own 90s. That email is talk90stome@podmasters.co.uk. See you next week.